Here's some rare photos of fascinating people through history. The two people in Grant Wood's American Gothic existed. This is what they looked like, and they were not a couple. It was the artist's sister and his dentist. This was Margaret Gorman, and she won the first Miss America competition in 1921. This was the first iteration of Ronald McDonald from 1963. This was Stephen Bobrowski, known as Lionel the Lion-Faced Man. He had hypertrichosis, which caused hair to grow up to 8 inches long all over his body. He performed with Barnum and Bailey and spoke 5 different languages. This was George Hackenschmidt, credited with inventing the bench press. This was Conrad Veidt, whose performance in the 1928 film The Man Who Laughs inspired the look for the Joker. This was Daniel Lampert, the world's heaviest person in the 18th century, weighing over 700 pounds, and according to a rumor, possibly fought off a bear by himself. This was Maud Wagner, who was believed to be the first female professional tattoo artist in the United States. This was Selma Burke, who designed the portrait of Franklin Roosevelt, still on the dime today. This is John Smith, and he was reported to be 137 years old at his death, but that's not verified. This is Ralph Lincoln, and he is the 11th generation cousin to Abraham Lincoln. This was Franz Reichelt wearing a homemade parachute suit. He tested it by jumping off the Eiffel Tower in 1912, and it did not deploy. This was Jacques Plante, the first goalie in hockey to ever wear a protective face mask in 1959, and I think you could see why. In 1964, Randy Gardner set the world record for the longest time without sleep, staying awake for 264 hours. The objects that are next to him were used to prove that he was still lucid. This was Maurice Tillett, a wrestler known as the French Angel. Some say he inspired Shrek, and he went undefeated for 18 months in the early 1940s. In 1907, this swimmer, Annette Kellerman, was arrested for indecency for wearing this exact bathing suit at Revere Beach in Massachusetts. This is Brumasia Gelgi, the world's tallest woman at just over 7 feet. This was Valentine Tapley, who vowed in 1860 to never cut his beard if Lincoln was elected. Here he is in 1896. He placed 5th in a world's longest beard competition. They had some long beards back then, apparently. Oh my goodness. This was Albert Woolson, the last surviving Civil War veteran. He fought for the Union Army and died in 1956 at 106 years old. This was Ham, the chimpanzee, the first ape launched into space. His mission tested cognitive function and safety. It was successful, and he actually returned unharmed. This was Charlotte and Marjorie Collier, a mother and daughter who survived the Titanic. Charlotte's husband and Marjorie's father, Harvey, died in the wreck, and they also lost their life savings of 5,000 pounds in cash. In 1903, Edward Llewellyn caught the biggest sea bass ever off of Catalina Island outside of California, and it weighed 425 pounds. This was Hans de Jong, the 1970 pole-sitting world champion, where yes, you just sit on a pole, and he did it for 92 hours straight. This was Chandra, the shortest recorded man. He stood 21.5 inches tall. This is a wax sculpture of Thomas Wetters, whose 7.5-inch nose was the largest ever recorded. I'm not gonna say it. This was Emma Lillian Todd, the first woman to design an airplane. This was Annie Edson Taylor, the first person to survive going over Niagara Falls in a barrel at 62 years old. This was William Hutchings, one of the last surviving American Revolutionary War veterans. He was 100 years old in this photo. This is Lonnie Johnson, the inventor of the Super Soaker, using his creation. This was Mary Ann Bevan, labeled World's Ugliest Woman in 1920. She joined circus sideshows to support her children after being diagnosed with a rare disease. This was Piet van der Zwart, known as the fattest man in Europe in 1955, weighing 455 pounds. This was Paul Carrison, whose skin turned permanently blue after years of ingesting colloidal silver. He claimed it cured his health issues. This was Robert Wadlow, the tallest man who ever lived. He was 1 inch off from 9 feet before his death. This was Charles Ponzi, the scammer that Ponzi schemes were named after. This photo, taken by Robert Cornelius in 1839, is considered the first selfie, and he had to sit still for 15 minutes to capture it. In 1909, Icarus the Pig went on a short flight with John Moore Brabazon, making pigs fly for the first time ever. This was Civil War veteran Jacob Miller, who was shot between the eyes and lived 17 more years after that. This was Herman, a U.S. Coast Guard ship's cat. responsible for catching all the pests. This was Jack, a South African baboon who worked as a railway signalman in the 1800s. He never made a mistake and was paid 20 cents a day and half a bottle of beer weekly. This was 107-year-old Civil War veteran Bill Lundy posing with a fighter jet in 1955. This is what it looked like to visit a French beach in 1925. This was the Dynasphere, a giant wheel vehicle invented by Dr. J.A. Purves that could reach 30 miles an hour. My head is spinning just looking at that photo, to be honest. This is Anna M. Jarvis, who was the inventor of Mother's Day. She later regretted it, citing commercialization ruining its meaning. Meh. This was the Peel P50, the smallest car ever produced. It measured 54 inches long, 41 inches wide, and 47 inches tall. This was astronaut Joseph P. Allen doing satellite maintenance in space. One wrong move. This was a 1930 meeting of the New York Fat Men's Club, where members had to be at least 200 pounds to join, and of course these later went away. This was Max Factor with his Beauty Calibrator, a device for measuring which parts of a woman's face needed more or less makeup. Good God. I don't even know what question to ask of like how this contraption even worked. I think that was just a big troll. I don't think they ever thought that.